All right, we're going to finish out this part together. So let's look at our heading tells us that how do reptiles, fish, and birds change as they grow? So we know that that's what we're going to talk about. The text here is going to talk about, and we see there's another text feature added here to help us understand. It has some pictures and some captions and is on the life cycle of a sea turtle. So far this week, we've seen the life cycle of a frog, the life cycle of a ladybug, and now the life cycle of a sea turtle. And so hopefully you can think how they have been different and how they have been the same. But let's think about how do baby birds look different from adult birds? Think about baby birds you've seen and think about adult birds. They're pretty similar. They're usually smaller and they have fewer feathers. That's one of the bigger differences if you thought that. And then let's think about how do reptiles, birds, eggs, and how do reptiles, birds, and fish all begin life? I just told you the answer. They all begin life as an egg, hopefully you're thinking. They all do. And what do reptiles and fish look like when they are born? Do they look the same as adults or different? They look like the adults of their own kind. So let's go ahead and follow along as I read. Okay, reptiles, fish, and birds have similar life cycles. Most of these animals lay eggs. Reptiles lay their eggs on dry land. Fish lay their eggs in water. Birds often build nests to protect their eggs. Most birds sit on their eggs until the eggs are ready to hatch. And we actually are going to be starting to read Mr. Popper's Penguins here pretty soon, and we'll learn how the penguin life cycle is. An animal grows inside the egg. For a time, it gets everything it needs to survive from the egg. When the young animal has grown enough, it hatches. Young reptiles, fish, and birds do not go through metamorphosis. They look similar to adults of their kind when they hatch. So if you remember from the other day, the frogs and the ladybugs, they both went through metamorphosis. They looked quite different when they were born from what they look like as adults. Reptiles, fish, and birds, they look pretty similar. They're just smaller versions. So the life cycle of a sea turtle. Egg. Female, so it starts as an egg, and the females crawl to the beach to lay eggs in the sand. So when they're young, sea turtles hatch on the beach and quickly crawl to the ocean. And then when they're an adult, sea turtles grow to 140 kilograms, which is the same thing as 300 pounds. Females stay in the sea until they are ready to lay their eggs. So I wondered, reading this made me think back, if you were in Branson last year, to that story we read about the sea turtles who were, I remember the kids rescued them. So that we learned a little bit about sea turtles last year. Okay, in time, young reptiles, fish, and birds grow into adults. They can reproduce and have young of their own. Most reptiles and fish do not look after their young. The young can find food on their own. Birds often raise their young until the young can fly and find food for themselves. So this quick check here says, what happens after a fish lays eggs? So let's go ahead and let's look at the life cycle here. What does happen after the fish lays an egg? So the fish eggs may float in water or sink to the bottom. So what happens directly after that is that fish hatch and begin to find their food. So they hatch out of the egg and they start searching for food. They don't need their mom and their dad fish to bring them food. They are able to do that on their own. And then after that, the next thing in the sequence is most fish continue to grow all their lives. Females may lay thousands of eggs each year. Okay, so how is a reptile's life cycle similar to a frog's? Okay, so let's think about how the reptile is similar to a frog. So they both start in the same way. I'll give you that hint. They both start as what? Hopefully you're yelling it out. I can't hear you because it's a video, but hopefully you said eggs. They both start as eggs. Okay, and how do they differ? Okay, so in the beginning, think about it. After an egg, what happened to a frog? So the frog went into a tadpole. And is a tadpole the same thing as an adult frog? No, it's not. It's not even a baby frog because it still has another stage to go through before it just gets to being a little frog. So the difference between the reptile and the frogs is they don't have metamorphosis. They don't change greatly. Remember, reptiles are born looking very similar to their parents, just smaller. So let's look at this quick lab, a bird's life cycle. Observe, look at these 3 photos. So we've got 1, 2, 3. Put them in order to show the life cycle of a chicken. So think about that. What is the life cycle of a chicken? Which one would come first? Okay, well, there's a lot of debate about that, but we're going to say the egg, and then the chick, and then the chicken. So it says, describe a chicken's life cycle. How does a chicken change as it grows? Well, just think about it. How does it change? It is born in an egg, and then it hatches out. Okay, and how does this chick look different from its chicken? So a chicken starts life as an egg, but when it hatches, it looks similar to an adult. So they look similar. They're not totally different, but it has softer feathers. It might be a different color, but it eventually, as it grows, it will look more and more like its parent each day. Okay, and it says, how is the life cycle of a chicken similar to that of a turtle? So similar means the same. So let's think back to, okay, so the turtle was born as an egg, then it was hatched, and it quickly crawled into the ocean to look for food, and it's just a smaller version of the adult. Okay, and how is that like the chicken? Okay, hopefully you're thinking it's the same thing. They're both born as an egg. They're both born smaller versions of their parents, and as they grow, they become more and more like their parents. Okay, the next one says, how do they differ? They both end up looking like their parents, but remember, a turtle just basically gets bigger, and it looks a lot like its parent. In the chicken, remember it says they change in color and in the texture of their feathers. They go from soft to a little more coarse. So they have a little more change in appearance, but they basically look the same. Okay, what is the life cycle of a mammal? Most mammals do not hatch from eggs. Young mammals are born live. They look much like their parents from the start. Adult mammals feed and care for their young. So right there's some big difference between mammals and reptiles. Do reptiles care for their young? Hopefully you're shaking your head no, they do not. Remember, they just go out of their eggs and they find food on their own. But here they're saying that the parents take care of them, they teach them, and they look very much like them. So you can see the similarity here. As they grow, young mammals lose fat and grow stronger. Their faces change to look more like adults. In time, they learn to survive on their own. They grow into adults that can reproduce and have young on their own. All right. Let's see here. So here are some more text features. We have a heading. We have pictures with captions. Cub. Most female cheetahs have 3 to 5 cubs at once. They protect and feed their cubs. This is their life cycle. The young cheetahs learn and practice skills they will need to hunt. Adult cheetahs grow big and can reproduce. Adults are as fast as a car on the highway. Isn't that crazy? So huge difference here between reptiles and mammals. They're born alive. And let's see. You guys have learned quite a bit about life cycles already, and we will be working on all of these the next several weeks so that we can keep them all straight. Okay, we're going to look real quick at the review of the lesson we've had this week. So every type of animal has its own life cycle. Okay, life cycle basically goes from birth to death and starts over again. Remember, it said even after the animal dies, it decomposes into the soil and provides nutrient for other things to grow. Amphibians and most insects go through metamorphosis, and metamorphosis means what? Scream it out, even though we can't hear you. Hopefully you screamed out the word change. They have big changes. Most reptiles, birds, and fish hatch from eggs. Reptiles and fish do not usually care for their young. And most mammals are born live. They depend on their parents until they can get their own food.